The Silent Rebellion. Maya Chen stared out the viewport at the massive Vorsian flagship that dominated the orbital space around Earth. The alien vessel's crystalline architecture caught the sunlight, fracturing it into prismatic patterns that would have been beautiful if not for what it represented: 23 years of human subjugation. She adjusted her neural suppressor, the sleek metallic band that all humans were required to wear, and felt the familiar dull pressure against her temples. The device monitored brainwave patterns associated with aggression and rebellion, supposedly to maintain peace. In reality, it was a constant reminder that humans were considered dangerous and unpredictable by their Vorsian overlords. As Earth's chief diplomatic representative, Dr. Maya Chen was one of the few humans permitted to speak directly with the Vorsian High Command. A privilege, they called it. A burden, she knew it to be. At 46, the weight of that responsibility had carved lines into her face and streaked her black hair with premature gray. But behind her tired eyes burned a resolve that 2 decades of oppression had failed to extinguish. Representative Chen. The computerized voice of her assistant interrupted her thoughts. The Vorsian delegation will dock in 12 minutes. Supreme Commander Zivak requests your immediate presence in the reception chamber. Maya checked her reflection in the polished surface of the viewport. Her formal diplomatic uniform, a charcoal gray suit with the Earth Protectorate insignia, was impeccable, as it needed to be. The Vorsians placed great importance on appearances, on the illusion of order and harmony. "Confirm my attendance," she replied, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her stomach. The neural suppressor hummed softly, adjusting to her elevated stress levels. Maya took a deep breath and recited the calming mantra that had become second nature after years under Vorsian rule. The device quieted, satisfied that her emotional state presented no threat to the established order. Little did it know, the reception chamber of the Earth Diplomatic Center was a grand room designed to Vorsian specifications: high ceilings, crystalline light fixtures that mimicked their architecture, and an excessive amount of open space that made humans feel small and exposed. Maya strode across the polished floor, past the rows of human aides standing at perfect attention, their suppressors gleaming under the harsh lights. At the far end of the chamber, flanked by imposing security drones, waited Zivak. The supreme commander of the Vorsian Empire stood nearly 8 feet tall, with the characteristic iridescent scales that shifted colors with emotional states, currently a cool blue tinged with purple, indicating calm authority with a touch of impatience. Representative Chen. Zivak's voice resonated with the multiple-toned quality typical of Vorsian speech. Punctual as always, Maya bowed precisely to the depth required by protocol, low enough to show respect, not so low as to appear subservient. The distinction was crucial. "Supreme Commander, we welcome you back to Earth." Zivak's head tilted slightly, the scales around his eyes shifting to a more intense purple. "This visit is not a diplomatic courtesy, Representative. The High Council has reached a decision regarding Earth's recent petition for eased restrictions." Maya felt her heart rate increase but maintained her composed expression. The petition had been meticulously crafted over 3 years, requesting minor concessions, reduced suppressor sensitivity for children, limited access to pre-invasion history texts, and slightly expanded travel permissions between human settlements. "I am eager to hear the Council's response," she said carefully. Zivak made a dismissive gesture with one four-fingered hand. "The petition has been rejected in its entirety." Despite anticipating this outcome, Maya felt a cold wave of disappointment. She waited, knowing there would be more. Furthermore, Zivak continued, his scales now rippling with flecks of red, "The Council has determined that human integration into the Empire has proceeded too slowly. New measures will be implemented immediately." The Vorsian commander activated a holographic display that materialized between them. Images appeared showing new suppressor technology, more invasive and comprehensive than the current models. The Mark IV neural management system will replace all existing suppressors within 60 days. It includes enhanced capabilities for detecting subversive thought patterns and a more robust correctional response. Maya studied the specifications with carefully concealed horror. The new devices would essentially render humans into docile automatons, capable only of approved thoughts and behaviors. "Supreme Commander," she began, choosing her words with the precision that had kept her alive and in position for over a decade. "While I respect the Council's concerns, these measures seem unnecessarily severe. The human population has been compliant on the surface," Zivek interrupted, his scales flashing a deeper red. "Our intelligence suggests otherwise. Production efficiency in mining operations has decreased by 6.8% over the last quarter. Unexplained equipment failures have increased by 12.3%, and communication patterns among settlement workers show statistical anomalies consistent with coordinated activity." Maya maintained her diplomatic mask even as her mind raced. Maya destroyed the paper, then sat back in her chair, feeling the weight of what she had just set in motion. The Resistance had always known this day might come, when the Vorgians would push too far and leave humanity with no choice but open defiance. They had prepared accordingly. For the next 12 hours, Maya played her role perfectly. She drafted official statements encouraging cooperation. She met with human settlement administrators to explain the transition process. She projected calm confidence that this was merely a temporary measure to address imperial concerns. All the while, across the planet and throughout the solar system's human settlements, coded messages passed through seemingly innocent channels. Supply inventories were verified. Sleeper agents were activated. Dormant systems, hidden for decades, hummed to life. At precisely 800 hours the next morning, Maya stood beside Supreme Commander Zivek in the Global Broadcast Center. Behind them, a massive display showed the new suppressor technology that would soon enslave humanity's very thoughts. "Citizens of Earth Protectorate," Zivek began, his scales a smug golden hue. "Today marks an important advancement in human integration into our glorious empire." As he continued his speech, Maya observed the humans staffing the broadcast center. To Vorgian eyes, they appeared appropriately deferential. To her, the subtle positioning, the almost imperceptible hand signals, confirmed that everything was in place. "Representative Chen will now address you regarding implementation procedures," Zivek announced, gesturing for Maya to step forward. She approached the broadcast podium, feeling the weight of 23 years of careful planning, of hope preserved through the darkest times, of countless small acts of defiance disguised as compliance. "Citizens of Earth," she began, her voice steady, "for over 2 decades, we have endured. We have survived. We have waited for the right moment." Confusion rippled across Zivek's scales. This was not the approved script. "Representative Chen," he started, a warning in his tone. Maya continued as if she hadn't heard him. "The Vorgian Empire believed they could conquer the human spirit through technology and fear. They believed we would surrender our very thoughts to preserve our lives." Zivek signaled frantically to his security personnel, but the human technicians had sealed the broadcast center doors. The security systems were mysteriously offline. "Today, they seek to extinguish what remains of our humanity." Maya's voice grew stronger, broadcasting to every human settlement across Earth and beyond. "They have miscalculated." With deliberate slowness, Maya reached up and removed her neural suppressor. The device should have delivered a crippling shock the moment she attempted this, but it remained inert in her hand. Zivek's scales flushed almost black with shock. "What have you done?" he hissed. Maya turned to face him directly, free of the suppressor for the first time in public in over 20 years. "Congratulations, Supreme Commander," she said, her voice carrying across the solar system to millions of listening humans. "You just declared war on the wrong species." The human response. Chaos erupted in the broadcast center as Zivek's scales cycled rapidly through colors. Purple shock to red rage to the sickly yellow of fear. He lunged toward Maya, but found himself suddenly restrained by the station's security field, a field now controlled by human operators. "Release me immediately," he roared, his multi-tone voice cracking with fury. Maya remained calm, watching as the Vorjan commander struggled against the invisible barrier. Behind her, the broadcast continued uninterrupted, transmitting to every corner of human territory. For 23 years, she continued, addressing her fellow humans across the solar system. We have appeared compliant while preparing for this day. The neural suppressors you wear are already deactivated. They have been for the past 6 hours. Across Earth and throughout the colonies on Mars, Europa, and Ganymede, humans reached up to touch the devices that had controlled them for so long. Some removed them immediately. Others stared in disbelief at the small objects in their palms, symbols of oppression rendered powerless. This is impossible, Zivak snarled. The suppressors are hardwired into our central security network. They cannot be deactivated without our authorization. Maya turned back to him, allowing herself a small smile. That's the thing about humans, Commander. We've always been good at impossible tasks. On the screens behind her, footage began streaming in from settlements worldwide. Humans standing together, suppressors removed, faces showing a mixture of fear, hope, and determination. No riots, no chaos, just silent, organized resistance. Years in the making. You see, we've been studying you while you thought you were studying us. Maya explained, not just to Zivak, but to the entire Vorjan Empire watching the broadcast. Your species values order and predictability above all else. It's your greatest strength and your critical weakness. Zivak's scales had settled into a dangerous deep red. Whatever you've done, it changes nothing. The Empire controls this system. Our military force is impressive, Maya acknowledged. Your warships, your weapons platforms, your drone armies, all controlled through the same centralized network architecture that manages the suppressors. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the Vorjan commander's features, his scales shifting to a mottled pattern of red and yellow. 23 years ago, when your ships appeared in our skies, humanity was divided. Maya continued. We fought among ourselves while you conquered us systematically. But during our captivity, we united as never before. She gestured to the humans around her. Communication specialists, engineers, medical staff, each now standing tall, suppressor-free, moving with practiced precision to secure the broadcast center. The resistance you detected, Maya said, a calculated move to draw your attention while we completed our real work. On the screens, new images appeared, deep underground facilities where humans had been secretly manufacturing equipment, laboratories where they had reverse-engineered Vorjan technology, training centers where generations had prepared for this moment. Dr. Elias Park, Maya called out, and one of the broadcast technicians stepped forward. An unassuming man who had served the Vorjan communication team for 15 years. Dr. Park isn't really a communication specialist, Maya explained to the watching galaxy. Before the invasion, he was Earth's leading expert in quantum network architecture. For the past 15 years, he's had access to the core systems of your communication network. Zivak's eyes widened. The quantum matrix is impenetrable. To direct assault, yes, Park spoke up, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who had spent his life solving impossible problems. But not to patient observation and incremental modification. One permission change every few months, one security protocol adjusted each year, small enough to avoid detection, significant enough when compiled. Maya nodded to another of her team. Dr. Sophia Okoro, who you know as a simple medical technician, was actually the pioneer of neural interface technology before your arrival. She spent the last decade studying how your suppressors interact with human neurology. The elegant woman stepped forward. The suppressors were never as effective as you believed, she explained. Humans are extraordinarily adaptable. Our brains began creating workarounds almost immediately. We simply ensured our people never completely adapted, keeping you convinced of your control while we prepared. Zivak's scales had now taken on the ashen gray of profound shock. This is sedition. This is survival, Maya corrected him. And now it's time to show you what humanity is truly capable of. She nodded to Park, who activated a sequence on his console. Across the solar system, on every Vorsian ship and base, alarms began to sound as their systems detected massive changes propagating through their network. Command screens flickered, security protocols initiated emergency lockdowns, and communication channels scrambled. "What you're experiencing," Maya explained to the increasingly panicked Vorsian commander, "is not a destructive attack. We could have simply shut everything down. But that's not our goal. What you're seeing is a fundamental shift in control architecture." On the main display, a graphical representation showed Vorsian systems being compartmentalized and isolated, not destroyed, but contained. "Your ships still function, your life support systems are intact, your personnel are unharmed," Maya continued. "But control of those systems now requires human authorization." Zivak stared at the display in horror. "The High Council will never." The council members exchanged glances, their scales shifting through various hues as they communicated in the complex color language that supplemented their spoken words. "You would trap us here?" asked another counselor. "Not at all," Maya replied. "As the document states, your personnel may return to Vorsian space with their ships intact once the terms are formally accepted. We have no desire to capture or harm any Vorsian." The first counselor's scales settled into a reluctant blue-green. "And if we agree to these terms, what guarantee do we have that humans will not use their unexpected capabilities against our homeworlds?" Maya smiled. "The same guarantee we had from you for the past 23 years. The knowledge that actions have consequences." She turned back to the broadcast, addressing both humanity and the Vorsian Empire simultaneously. "Today marks a new chapter in our shared history, not as conquerors and conquered, but as two species acknowledging each other's strengths and respecting each other's sovereignty." Across Earth and its colonies, humans watched in stunned silence as 2 decades of oppression ended not with destruction but with transformation. In Vorsian territories, citizens witnessed something unprecedented. A subjugated species rising not in violent revolution, but in calculated, coordinated reclamation of their freedom. "The neural suppressors were meant to control us," Maya concluded, holding the deactivated device in her palm. "Instead, they united us in ways you couldn't imagine. You sought to silence our minds, but in that silence, we found our greatest strength." She approached Zivak once more, deactivating the containment field with a gesture. "You wanted war with humans," she said quietly, "but I'm offering you something much more valuable. Peace with equals." Slowly, the Vorsian commander's scales shifted to a deep blue, the color of profound realization. He looked at Maya with new understanding, seeing not just a representative of a conquered species, but an architect of a masterful strategy that had outmaneuvered an empire. "The Council will need time to formalize their response," he said finally. "Of course," Maya nodded. "In the meantime, I suggest you communicate with your forces throughout the system. Explain the situation. Ensure they understand that resistance is unnecessary and potentially harmful." As Zivak moved to comply, Maya turned back to her team. The broadcast continued, but now showed scenes of celebration erupting across human settlements, restrained at first, then building as people realized the suppressors truly were deactivated, that this wasn't another Vorsian test or trick. Dr. Park approached her, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "Perhaps not tomorrow or next year, but eventually. The Empire won't easily accept this outcome." "I know," Maya acknowledged, "but they'll return to a different humanity than the one they conquered. United, prepared, and unwilling to surrender what we've reclaimed." She looked out at the stars visible through the broadcast center's viewport, stars that had once represented only the extent of their prison, but now offered possibilities for a liberated humanity. "Besides," she added with a small smile, "we've had 23 years to study their technology, their strategies, their weaknesses. If they choose to return as enemies, they'll find we've learned their lessons well." Across the solar system, humans stepped out of shadows into light, removing the suppressors that had silenced them for a generation. They emerged not with rage but with resolve, not seeking vengeance but building something new from the ruins of their captivity. Throughout Vorjan territory, the news spread rapidly. The unthinkable had happened. A subjugated world had freed itself without firing a shot, had turned the Empire's own systems against it, had transformed oppression into opportunity. And as Maya Chen watched the Vorjan Council reluctantly sign the treaty recognizing Earth's independence, she thought of all the silent sacrifices, the countless small acts of defiance that had led to this moment. Of parents teaching children forbidden history through bedtime stories, of engineers making microscopic modifications to Vorjan technology during routine maintenance, of ordinary people maintaining hope when all seemed hopeless. The Vorjans had declared war on humanity without understanding what that truly meant. They had sought to conquer the human spirit through technology and fear. They had failed. And in that failure, both species would discover something unexpected. The possibility of a future built not on domination but on mutual respect, hard-earned, reluctantly given, but ultimately transformative. Maya smiled as she signed the treaty on behalf of a united Earth. "Congratulations," she said quietly to the Vorjan delegation.